this video has to be put out there before the clown show, which is the parliament of this country, of this state, and hasn't started.
Continue.
It is the parliament of this state, aren't very bright. Just before they closed, they rammed through legislation, and that's all it is. It's legislation, it's not law. It can't ever be law unless it complies with our superior law, which is the Constitution. Regardless of what Ann Toomey and several other people are putting around, because it's a lie. What the problem is with what they say is it doesn't meet our Constitution, which is the supreme law. Our Constitution. We the people, all of us, doesn't matter what colour you are, where you were born, when you were born, or anything else. It is our Constitution. We signed it into law by our vote. So, what transpired? In 1890, the 6 colonies decided to put representatives together to create a draft constitution to take to England, because they know, and if you know anything about the Constitution and what it really is, you would know that it has nothing to do with a governing body. It has to do with the establishment of a federation of people, the joining together of 6 colonies who had a local government called the state parliaments, the parliaments of the colonies, and they were the local government. And Toomey got that bit right, but from in the wrong context, because you had no idea what she was talking about. There was a local government. It was the local government of England here running the colonies, and it was the parliament for those colonies. That's how it works. Now, for Roger Cook and all the rest of the clowns in this country who think you can ram legislation through, let's look at the facts. You can't even propose legislation. No parliament has the right to propose the legislation. Read your Constitution and weep. Our Constitution says the supreme, absolute and uncontrollable authority remains with the people. There goes the supremacy of the Parliament, and the Parliament above the people and above the Constitution and the High Court and all that. That's all nonsense. Political party lies, fraud. Why on earth some clown wants to give Mark McGowan any award or give him an honorary doctorate in what? In how to mislead, deceive and lie to the people? He'd get 100% for that. That's all it is. Another nonsense. Now, this is for you, Roger Cook. It's time you woke up. Your gun laws are lies, fraud, and have no value in law. You cannot empower a public officer, because there's no police, they're public officers. They're creatures of statute. Who said? High Court. They're creatures of statute. You can't have both. You either have an officer of the Crown or a creature of statute. You've got a creature of statute. You created it. They have an ABN number. Oh, that's just for GST. Why does a government department have GST when they're not allowed to have GST? You can't. The Commonwealth can't tax a state. They cannot give, collect GST and give it to the state. Oh, what a wonderful job Mark McGowan did, screwing everybody over. Quarantining a state when it's against the law for the states to do anything with quarantine under Section 69 of the Constitution and under Section 51, subsection 9, when it was subsequently transferred to the Commonwealth as an exclusive act of the Commonwealth. Nothing more. Now, Western Australia thought it was smart. Well, it wasn't Western Australia, it was our lovely little John Forrest, who was the Premier prior to Federation. He rammed through an act just like you're doing, Roger Cook, Dodgy Roger I call him, because that's about what you are, a dodgiest person in our parliament at present, because you're not telling the truth. Now, he rammed through an act called the Constitution Alteration Act, 1899. But what you can't fathom, and Anne Toomey is concealing, because she conceals the fact there is 9 clauses to the Constitution, and those 9 clauses come from the 9 clauses put there by Queen Victoria. They are part of the Enabling Act. An Enabling Act is an act passed by the British Parliament, who were above our colonies. They needed an act to give us permission to have a constitution, to federate into one colony, and it's all concealed in the 8 clauses. That's why Anne Toomey and people who act or talk the same talk she does continually states there's only one clause that establishes a commonwealth. No. Look at clause 4, but look at a whole lot of them. Read the whole lot and comprehend what they say. If you want to know what they say, that's simple. Look at Quick and Garran, the Red Book. Anne Toomey reckons the Green Book and Red Book are the same. There's only one difference, Anne Toomey. The Red Book was written by the people who wrote the Constitution. No, Quick and Garran didn't write it. They documented it. From that point of view, yeah, you could say they wrote it, but they documented the interpretation, which is a public record of how they come to each section of the Constitution. Now let's get to the facts. The people become supreme and sovereign in their own right on the proclamation of the Constitution on the 9th of July 1900. The colonies and the Australasian Council ceased to exist and all their laws. Reference to that is section 51, subsection 38. But they only had 7 legislative areas. 7. And all, that's lawful ones we're talking about, and all 7 of those are contained in section 51 of the Constitution. There is no authority over land or to tax land. Never was. This is not about just councils. This is about lying politicians, and every single one are. Every time they open their mouth, they're lying. With the exception of Malcolm Roberts, at least he's trying to educate the public on what's going on by these idiots in Canberra. They're not representing us. What none of you are realising and fail to see, if every state didn't put its constitution in place at federation, which they're required to do under 106, and it continues subject to the Commonwealth Constitution Act, the Enabling Act. On the 29th of October 1900, Queen Victoria cemented every state constitution in place with a letters patent, so it can't be moved. It can't be moved. Every single one. Why didn't we have it? Because the good old politicians of the day decided they would produce the 1899 Act, but it failed. It's gone. It went out the door with Clause 7. Like it or lump it, that's it. Clause 8 makes us a self-governing colony of England. Like it or lump it, that's the truth. You can sit there and lie all day. You can go on the news what a wonderful person you are. No, you're a liar. You try to say that the Parliament is the government. That's a lie. The Parliament is just that. It is a Parliament. Why is it there? To put together legislation, which is called a bill, to put it to the lower house. If they pass it to the upper house, if it complies with the Constitution, it goes to the Governor. The Governor then signs on behalf of the Crown, which binds the Crown to a law made pursuant to the Constitution. That's the only way it happens. But the Governor has to be lawful. He's put in place by a letters patent. Who decided they had the right to change the whole lot? Who told you could? The whole problem is Australia is a stolen country, according to this gentleman. What happens when a person refuses to pay land rates and bills and traffic fines? Well, put your bills and traffic fines in the bin, pay your bills if you owe them, and if you speed and you get traffic fines, given under the current legislation, you're a donkey if you think you're going to get out of it. If some magistrate lets you out, someone else will come along and hit you up again. The thing is, none of that law is valid. Who gave politicians the right to give themselves authority for one of their companies, because the police department has an ABN number? Every single government entity, they call it, has an ABN number, meaning they're trading companies. Like it or lump it, the law says they are. The law says, if that law was valid. But that's not valid either. The Corporations Act, ASIC Act, none of those are valid. Not one single one. Go back to Federation. On the 1st of January 1901, they proclaimed and gazetted the Commonwealth Constitution Act 1900 UK into law in this country. Who did? We did, by referendum. That created the Commonwealth Constitution Act 1900 UK as the supreme law of this country, being the enabling act. It enabled what? It enabled us to have a constitution derived from that act. Is it an act then? No, a constitution is not an act. We accepted it. That's how it became a constitution, from the act. Is the act still valid? Absolutely is. Because while that sits there, politicians can't touch it. No one even in England can touch it, because it binds the crown. Oh, you say they can overwrite? No, they can't. No, they can't. Magna Carta, 1688, Bill of Rights, Act of Settlement and Habeas Corpus, King James Bible, and all imperial law is law in this country, subject to the Constitution. Subject to the Constitution. Subject to means in compliance with. Now you go to page 346, it says not all enactments of the Parliament are valid. So when they're enacted by the Parliament, they're a bill. So they're not valid until they go to the Parliament, the House of, the upper and lower house of the Parliaments. They pass it, they correct any faults in it in the lower house, they pass it to the upper house, they check if it goes to the, or complies with the Constitution. If it does, it then goes to the Governor, who signs off on behalf of the Queen, binding the Crown of England to a law made pursuant to the Constitution. Rod Cullerton found out when you take a law made pursuant to the Constitution, or a purported law even, they can't deal with it, because they can't, they're bound. They are bound because their representatives signed off, but they, unfortunately, the representative, with the proper governors, the proper representatives, are the only ones who can sign off. Do we have them at present? No, we don't. We do not have lawful governors. All they are is a rubber stamp clown, sits there and plays games and claims to have the authority to sign on behalf of the Crown. Our current governor in Western Australia was the Minister for Vaccinations. How could he, given the evidence that's out now, still sit there lawfully without being charged with murder? Bodily harm. He was the minister pushing it. Oh, we had a mandate. What's a mandate? It's only a suggestion. It's not even law. How many cops ran around booking people on mandates? Fining them thousands of dollars for what they did. So let's get back to the issue. This is the last day of 2024. What it means, what I said. Read that section of the Constitution on page 346. It says, not all enactments of the Parliament are valid. That's your bill. Only those passed pursuant to, in accordance with, and under the authority granted by the Constitution. There's your first lower house Parliament. And those laws only are binding on the courts, judges and people of every state. How do they become law? Signed by the government. So let's go back again and go through that particular section again. It might wake you up. It might just wake you up, maybe, along with a brick in the side of the head. But let's look at the facts. Not all enactments of the Parliament are valid. Only those passed pursuant to, in accordance with, and under the authority granted by the Constitution, and those laws only are binding on the courts, judges and people of every state. Meaning every single act passed by the Parliament or purported government of Western Australia, which isn't even a lawful Parliament, not one of those are valid. All the ones you ran through before Christmas, your Aboriginal Inheritance Act, all of that, Heritage Act, none of those are valid. Your Firearms Act is not valid. I don't care what you say. Go read the Imperial Act. It allows us to have a weapon. I understand in accordance with laws of good governance there has to be restrictions. I totally comprehend that. But to do what you've done is absolute lies. And to give the decision to police officers who are not trained in lawful procedures in relation to how a court runs, and I'm not talking about from their perspective putting the cases to the court, I'm talking about sitting in judgment of people. You have to do it and do it according to the law. You can't pass the law outside the provisions of the Constitution. You can't read the Constitution. But first you have to be a lawfully appointed Parliament. You have to be. Not what you want to be. To be a lawfully appointed Parliament, you have to put every state constitution for every state back in place in its original form, and not one complies. So while they sit out there, there is never going to be a lawful federal Parliament. So all the nonsense that Albanese and these clowns with their so-called global warming, their emissions and all that, it's all lies. It's all lies. The laws are invalid. Read up on volcanoes, you find out carbon dioxide doesn't go up to the atmosphere. It goes down and fills all the valleys. It gets blown out literally 3, 4, 5 kilometres into the air, and yet it comes straight back down and fills the valleys and gasses everybody. Go read about volcanoes. Go read about it, and you'll find out what I'm saying is correct. You're being lied to, and those lies are going to cost you billions of dollars. You're the people. Now, if you want to know what an Aboriginal is, it doesn't exist in the Constitution. Any Constitution does not exist. Because it's an oxymoron word. I've never liked it, don't like it, and people who know me know why. Most of them, they're natives. Queen Victoria in the Western Australian Constitution, I believe every other constitution, says every native shall be fed. Every native shall be clothed. Every native shall be housed. Every native shall be given a small portion of the CDP to be able to survive. So they were native before we came here. Now who's native? Every single person who's born here is native to this country. Native to this country. Excuse me. Now, who is Indigenous? Every person who was born here. Can we pull ourselves apart and go back to the different countries where our heritage comes from? No. So what did we bring with us to this country? Heritage. What was built on it? This country. You're trying to say that somehow these people that were here before, and they weren't not the originals. They're not the originals. The Egyptians were the original people based on evidence proper evidence that were here before everybody else. They're saying, oh, this happened, and all the stories come out and all the lies. Now, the reason you're doing this Aboriginal Heritage Act, Dodgy Roger, is because you're married to a native. And you've got half native kids if your wife is a full blood. Can I say that without discriminating? Yes, I can. Because read the state constitution, the correct one. It says every native. Right down until half caste. I'm not saying they can't, if you're part Aboriginal, you can't claim to be Aboriginal. I'm saying the law, which is the state constitution, puts every Aboriginal, every native of this country into the constitution through the state constitution. That's what I'm saying, because it's a fact. Stop lying about these people saying, oh, they're this, they're that. It's not your business to even describe them. We have a state constitution which describes them as native. We have a constitution that describes them as half caste, which is half white, half native. Why is it in there? Because that's how the law has to determine who they are. That is how the law says they got to be. That is subject to the Constitution, subject to the will of the people. We were asked in 1967 to give native people the same authority as us, the same rights as us. Well, you tell me, you smart aleck lying politicians, why you haven't given it to them. You Dodgy Roger, you're making out, oh, it's got to be done, this has got to be done. It's all lies. It's all lies. Whatever you told Cullerton led him to believe that you were going to remove that. You didn't remove it at all. You just lied. Like everything else that politicians do. They just lie. Everyone knows they're lying. Their lips are moving. It is time this country woke up. If you have a public utility with an ABN number, it no longer belongs to the people. If the Parliament is not sovereign and supreme, which it is not, page 676 says the Parliament's not supreme, and the very essence of federation is that that must be so. The Parliament, like everyone else, is subject to the law and must abide by it. Fact. Don't care what Anne Toomey says. She says the green and red constitution are the same. If the green one doesn't say that, it's not. It's a nonsense anyway. Who gave the Federal Parliament in 1988 the right to have a constitutional convention and then produce another constitution with a different interpretation than the people who interpreted ours, the people who wrote it? Every single one of them had an input into the Red Book. None of them had an input into the Green one. Did the people? No. So who authorised it? No one. So you are just lying. You're lying. You're not misleading, deceiving. That's one of the things. They're the things you are doing based on your lies and your fraud on the people and your attempt to hand this country to a one-world system of government. Where'd you get the permission of us? You didn't. Who gave you the right, this Dodgy Roger, to give onshore gas to Woodside outside any agreement? That's our gas. Then you want us to pay monstrous electric and energy bills while you give our stuff away. How long is it before the Chinese start paying for that gas? 20, 30, 40 years? The rumour is 40, so I'll concede 20, I don't care, 20, 30, 40. You have no right to give them anything until we, the people in this country, have our needs satisfied. How much does it take to get gas out of the ground when you don't have to pump it? You have to drill it. It pushes itself out. So I believe, according to what you get out of books written by different people. But nobody has a right to take it out of this country and give it to a foreign country at the expense of the people. And what about the coal? Oh, you can't burn coal because of the emissions. More lies. Build some better scrubbers for your chimneys and there is no emissions. build better scrubbers. Do what you are told by the people. Stop messing around and lying. Simon Bowen, get another job. You don't understand the environment. If you did, you would be saying the same things I am. But you're not. Renewable energy. Where do you get renewable energy when the solar panels have a lifespan? They have a lifespan. And after that, you've got to replace them. The windmills are falling apart so darn quick. How long are they lasting? 5, 6, 10 years? Then falling apart? How are you going to dispose of the blades of those fans? How are you going to clean up the mess? How are you going to pull the 40 tonne of concrete out of the ground that they're mounted on when they've got to go? That is pollution. You take up farming land, you've got stupid windmills floating around in it. Why? Because you people don't have the intellectual ability to take care of our energy needs. You could pump water down under the ground and down into the layer where it is boiling hot and bring it back up and use that to drive generators, boilers, whatever you want to run from it. Are you doing it? No. Renewable energy that can be renewed without any cost to us, but you can't do that because you're lying again. So as we go into the new year, could we actually have politicians that tell the truth? We can. I'm not asking you clowns to tell the truth, because that's probably way beyond your pay level, because you lack the intellectual ability. I've been feeding information through a friend of mine to the politicians of Western Australia. What a joke. They keep saying they are sovereign, they're supreme. All lies, all that garbage comes from people like Ann Toomey, who promote that crap. Because that's what it is. The supreme, absolute and uncontrollable authority belongs to the people. So you say, oh, the government has plenary power. They're not a government to start off with, they're a parliament. The parliament, which is a legislative part, the legislative assembly and legislative council, has the right, if the law complies with the Constitution, to pass any legislation or bills that come from the executive parliaments of the state. Executive. 10 people from the lower, 8 from the upper, who put the legislation together. That's the law. Now, for all those politicians to get there to start off with, they have to come from a pool of people selected by the governors of the states. You vote for one person once for the lower house and one person once for the upper house. There's no electoral boundaries. The Boundaries Act ceased to exist when the colonies become states. Read Clause 8 states that. So I'm correct, you're a liar. And you're pushing lies. And the Electoral Act, the Electoral Commission, they're all frauds. Lying, thieving, traitorous frauds, collecting money for nothing. Something not allowed to have. Wake up and understand. An election is held federal level or state level, state by state, and it's the people selected are selected to represent the whole state. Because the Boundaries Act doesn't apply, you can't have an electoral boundary. Why have we got them? To manipulate the system, that's why. By lying, thieving politicians. Lying, thieving politicians. That's all they are. The whole lot are lying, thieving politicians. None of them tell the truth. Don't worry, I listened to Pauline Hanson's gentleman. He actually says some pretty sensible things, but he doesn't comprehend the supremacy of the people and the Constitution and his position in our Parliament if he was a lawful senator, straight away out from under the control of political parties, because he can't represent us while he's representing a political party. Who says so? We do, through our Constitution. That's the only permission you're given to pass laws that way. I don't care if you don't agree with what I say. What I'm saying, Get a copy of the draft constitution. It's available through your library. Get a copy of the actual constitution, which is the enabling act for it to exist. Get a copy. Now you can get access to the state constitution, the letters patent for the office of governor, and all those available acts. Chalice real property, which says the property is in fee simple. So, problem you got, Dodgy Roger, your so-called act that you're going to call a law, the Aboriginal Heritage Act giving all the law, everything to the native people, is a lie. Because we're natives too, so we're entitled to have the same thing. You try to block us, that's discrimination. You can't do that either. But you can't pass a law like that. Since the enactment of the Acts Amendment Repeals Court in November 2003, and then assuming that you had the authority but you don't, it came into being on the 1st of January 2004. After that, all the acts, every single one, your Child Welfare Act, your State Magistrates Court Act, they're all fraud, all invalid. Your Oath Affidavit Statutory Declarations Act that you claim took away the Oath of Allegiance out of Schedule E of the State Constitution. That wasn't our Constitution, you moron. It's not our Constitution. The Constitution is available in its full context because it's a letters patent. You can't change it. You can't touch it. Only the reigning monarch has the power to sign off on any alteration to that letters patent. Only the reigning monarch. Read the Statute of Monopolies. It might wake you up to a few facts. But I know. Anne Toomey says, oh, they're only statutes. They can be altered by a parliament like Magna Carta. Magna Carta is not a statute, you moron. It is not a statute. It is a Charter of Rights inflicted on King John and upheld by the Parliament and governing bodies in England. Read the history right up until the death of William III, and you'll find out exactly what I'm saying is correct. Every single person in this country is bound by an act called 1 William and Mary. Every single person who exercises authority must swear the oath contained in our Constitution. There's no exceptions except the clergy of the Church of England. England can do what it likes, but you can't change the Constitutional Act without the people. It's an indissoluble act. Indissoluble Commonwealth Constitution Act. It's indissoluble. The Federation is indissoluble. It states that in our Constitution. That is fact. Dawn Shannon. Wayne, excuse my ignorance, King Charles was here recently. Could he have signed us over? No. No. Read the history of England, you'll find out the highest authority in the British Parliament above everybody else is the Archbishop of Canterbury. The Church has always been there. The Church of England is an objecting church. That's why the bishops that went to Rome and told the Pope he was full of garbage, he is not God on earth, they come back as the protesting church, the Church of England. The Church of England. Now, the Roman Church ran England before that, and then it came back and the archbishops did through the Church of England. Same doctrines, slightly different in that they could marry and all those things they wanted because there's no biblical reason why you can't. Chastity and all that. None of that had any value in the Bible, so it wasn't law. That's what, and they stuck to the King James Bible. So just leave that bit at that. Now, going back to what I was saying, I'll pass this to you, Dodgy Roger. You are sitting in our Parliament in treason. When the Parliament's dissolved, which is when they prorogue the Parliament, you must step down, and every single person in there, and we only have an executive, which is the one selected by the governor to run the state during that period of time, and the same goes at federal level. Why are we still paying you clowns when you only get paid for the time you spend in our parliament? You don't get all these bonuses and all these rises in wages. You don't get these wages. If you do, you're stealing. Read the Constitution, it says so. It doesn't say you're stealing, it says you can't have it. You can't have a pension, only the one we have. And by the way, our pension is law. It's part of the Constitution. So all the people that are run around now saying the pension is charity, no, the pension is what you pay for and still are paying for. 7.5% tax per week, all your working life to pay for your pension. It's yours. You can't means test something that you own. You are ordered by our Constitution to provide a pension, old age and invalid. Read it and weep, so your lies don't work anymore. So all of you people, Damien Freeman, the new King James Bible is a fake. King James was a pedophile who practiced witchcraft. Produce the evidence and I'll back you up, Damien, otherwise shut up. Simple. Produce it. If you're going to make a statement on my page, produce it or shut up. Because I'm not interested in your lies. You say he practiced witchcraft. He was a pedophile. He was the King of England. Did anyone convict him of that? No. So produce the evidence, mate. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying produce the evidence. In this country, you've got to produce evidence. Evidence is taken by your 5 senses. That's evidence. Hearsay is irrelevant, and that's what you're saying. So you have a happy New Year's Eve. I hope all of you who are going out come back safely. I hope all of you will be well, and I hope the new world, or the next generation, which is 2025, I hope that is a better year for everybody. I hope it is. Stick to your Constitution. It's the strongest law in this country, bar none. Thank you.